Almost every French cleat video on YouTube has a beautiful wall of plywood and tools. I don't have that. I've got one sheet of plywood, a small shop, so I've really got to think about this. So I'm going to cut this a little bit differently. We're going to set it up a little differently than everyone else, but I got to tell you, it wasn't my original idea. This is coming from an awesome guy, Pete Squared. He's really smart and made some cool stuff. So stick around, because this is going to be a really cool way, and it's going to be cut differently than everyone else you've ever seen. Now, before we start cutting this thing up, we got to get this wall painted. So I've got everything marked off where I want it, and now I'm going to tape off a little box, because I'm not painting the whole wall, because that would be extra money and then time of getting all this stuff off. So we're just going to paint where the French cleats are going. Safety first, right? They're going to be using the spray can instead of rolling it. We're being lazy. And while we wait for the paint to dry, we're going to come over to the table saw, get this set up. So I'm going to set my blade to 45, and then I'm going to get this 3/4 inch scrap and clamp it to the fence. It won't matter on the first cut, but on our repetitive cuts, it will, and that'll all make sense to you once we start going. So I want my strips to be 3 inches wide, so I'm going to set it 3 7/8. An eighth for the blade, and then another 3/4 for this, and that'll come out to be 3 inches. If you don't believe me, I did a little test piece just to make sure. Now when it comes to cutting these big 8-foot boards or panels, whatever you call them, it's going to be a little troublesome. But with my big table, I've got the outfeed set up. I need something for infeed. Luckily, I've got this old miter saw stand thing I've got, so I can sit on here with the wheels. I'm going to feed it through and run it through. And I definitely wasn't going to even try to handle a big 4x8 sheet of plywood by myself. So I went ahead and got the boys at Home Depot to cut this for me. Plus, it wouldn't fit in the back of our van anyway, and I don't have a truck or trailer. So it worked out for everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get this half piece. It's not quite in half. If I cut it directly in half, it wouldn't have fit everything, right? Or I would have been left over some scrap I couldn't use. So I got one piece at 26 inches wide, and the other one's just shy of 22 inches wide. So anyways, we're going to do this first cut here. Alright. The first piece is going to have a 45 and then a flat, and that's okay. I'm either going to use this as a bottom, or I could use this as a back, you know, the back cleat. We'll see. Anyways, we're just going to keep ripping down the rest of the sheet. And actually, this is where this extra piece is going to make sense. Because see, when I go to put that there, it's going to be lined up at that wood nice and even. If I had it with that fence, there's a little gap and the wood will go under it. Well, I didn't show you on camera. So, see my little scrap piece I did, it would go under there and it wouldn't keep my measurements the same. So at least this way, it butts up in there. Perfect. Now, that's what each piece is going to look like. It's going to have a 45 on each side. And once we put this on the wall, I'll be able to explain that a little bit more. So I'm going to rip all these pieces down and we'll be back. Alright, so my first piece, that was the smaller one, was 22. Gave me 5 usable pieces. One that's definitely smaller for like a cleat. And that first piece that's not a 90, that is a 90 and not a 45, I decided I'm not going to use that. I might save it for a jig or backing as well. So then I kept ripping the other piece, but I only can fit about 7 to 8 boards depending on my spacing, how tall or low I want it. So I only have 8 workable pieces and the other ones are 90s. So all the workable pieces have the 45s on both sides. These are probably going to be, like I said, spacer for the back or turn into a jig or something. So I still got a little bit more wood left. So for those of you wondering how much you could get out of one whole sheet, if you stuck with this, you're going to get, let's see, I said 5 here, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11 of the usable 45s, and then you're going to have 2 of the not usable ones. So if you're going to use a whole sheet and you have room for that, I'd probably go, instead of 22, I'd probably cut that down an inch so you have a little bit less on this, but you can get full cleat. So it'd be 21 and a 27 piece. That way, because if I had like another inch to inch and a half here, I'd get 4 more of these, right? So I'd have 3, 4, so I'd have another 7 out of this one. And I would have got 6 usable from that one. So that would have been cool. So my mouth is a little off, but that's okay. I have way more than I have room for. And here's an awesome drawing of how I picture it in my head. So I've got about 4 foot of wall space from the middle of the wall to about the top of the garage where it's going to hit. So I've left a little bit of space so I can actually use that cleat. So each cleat is 3 inches. Then there's 3 inches of space, 3-inch cleat, 3 inches of space. So every foot, I'm going to get 2 cleats. And I got 4 foot to play with. So in theory, I should be able to get 8 cleats and still have room to use all of them. So let's go ahead and install it and see if that works. And since we're not installing plywood or OSB or anything on my drywall here, I need to go ahead and find the studs because I'm going to go ahead and screw the cleats into the studs. So I'm just going to mark this off here. And I'm going to turn that off. Is the power button? Okay. So I'm going to mark that with a little piece of tape and transfer this all the way up there. And that way we can screw in our cleats without messing up our new painted wall. And I would love to just get my laser level and put it on this wall here, but my garage is not level. It kind of slants down, so that's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. And so now I'm going to get this 40 inches off the ground. So I've got this little stand here holding it up where I want it to try to give me an extra hand and help it. But for the time being, we're going to use 4 foot level just to kind of make sure everything can be as straight as possible, because this is going to be multiples. So if I mess up now, it's only going to increase as I install more cleats. Also, make sure you install this the right way, because if I don't have this part pointing up, then I'll have to flip it over and try again, right? But just going to make sure that let's start with countersinking them, and then we're going to screw them in here. So here's my stud here. So roughly here, did I move it? No, it looks good there. Just a hair. All right. So we're going to go right over here. And I got to get another longer drill bit, just to make sure that I can reach that point. And you know what? I don't think I get that here. I'm going to get these 3-inch screws to go in here. Perfect. And it doesn't have to be perfect now because I could still change this if I wanted, but I think it looks pretty good still. So we'll just go ahead and repeat that process all the way through. And maybe we'll do a little time lapse with some music, yeah? Okay, so this is taking longer than I thought, and I don't think the time lapse is going to look very good, because even if I speed it up 10 times, it's still going to be almost looking like normal speed, right? I have to switch, but I only have 2 drills, and since my countersink isn't long enough, I have to have 1 countersink. 1 is my 1/8 inch for the screws to get into the studs, and then my impact to screw it in. So I've just got to keep changing bits, and long story short, anyways, I'm going to finish the rest of this wall, and when it's done, I'll meet you guys right back here. And I just remembered a very important step as I was installing these. After you get these cut, these are very sharp. So what I'm going to do is take that fence off, and these boards are going to line up just in there to just rip off that teeny little bit and get that edge off here. So I'm going to chain my blade back to 90, and I'm going to run these through. Then we can safely install them. All right, there we go. It's installed, and it looks pretty good. Now, let me show you why I chose this spacing and this style. One, I think that looks cool with the little 45 going that way versus just a flat cutoff. So there's my aesthetic with the gray. I think it looks good. But if we were to use the original Cleat, see where it's got the 90? When you go to put this in here, there's not enough spacing, right? So I would have to make a really small Cleat, and I'd have to put it at the top of whatever tool holder or whatever I'm making. And so this can't get in there, so I'd have to space these out farther, which would prevent me from having so many cleats. So that would, I'd have to have more spacing, less cleats, less variety, things like that. Now this one can slide right in there, and see I got the 3. Now obviously I use this as a spacer, but because this one has a 45 and this has a 45, it'll pop right out. So you can just put it in there now. So now I can have a bigger cleat, and I don't have to have it all the way at the very tip. So that's another really cool thing. Like I said, I think it's a smart design. I also think it looks really cool. So that's kind of a little bit of the math and the spacing. So again, if you have a similar setup, if you've got like a 4-foot section, you can get about 8 cleats using these measurements. All right, 2 walls built. Now we got to test it out. What should I build first? Should I do something for my drills, which I use all the time? My sander? Nah, I think I'm going to go with my circular saw because it kind of sits funny, takes up a decent amount of room, and I like the way they look, and I can't wait to build one. So let's have at it. All right, here it is. Tool holder for my circle saw. And I know it looks kind of cool and fancy, but let me tell you, this is a little bit of a challenge for me. I should have just made some, cuts and glued them together real simple, but I want to get fancy with these box joints. And, well, I wish I could tell you that it came out like this the first time, but it didn't. You guys know me. And so I had my 1-sheet plywood with some scrap left over, and I was going to make it with this, but now this is a mix of offcuts because I messed up so bad. I had to dig into my scrap pile. So let me tell you. So I tried to get fancy with these box joints, and honestly, this is the first time I've ever done a box joint. I don't know why I decided to do it now, but actually, no, I lied. I saw something online that kind of looked similar, and so I was like, oh, that'll look cool, rather than just a flat sheet, right? So that's why I did that. But when I first did this, I cut it a little bit, and they didn't line up. So this piece, didn't match. I made a mirror image, but it didn't match this side. It was off a little bit or something weird. I don't know. And then I tried to cut triangles again, and I cut them too small, and they only fit the inside. I had no room for the actual joints. So good job. Anyway, it's built. Super excited. It looks cool, and it works. Slide right in there. Boom. And that is not going anywhere. Now, I did want to mention there's one thing though, because I see a lot of people do this, and this is a 45-degree cut. I've seen some do it a little more steeper, and some I've even seen do 30, some have done 60. But I decided I'm just going to go with 45 and see how that comes out. With the 45, it was it was on there, but it almost tipped. So here's what I mean. Before I put this piece on there, I only had this bottom piece, and when I put it in there, it could kind of come back, and I didn't want to bump it and make it fall or anything, so I put this piece up here. I also seen some people put it a little higher and just have this little toggle that kind of comes back and forth, whichever way you want to do. But just FYI, if you do something like this and you do a 45 and you have the battery on the back, it's probably going to come out or be very, very close. So just be cautious of that. So there it is. 1 sheet of plywood, a French cleat wall, and a custom tool holder for the saw that started this whole thing. And I still have some scraps left over, which is good, because we're not quite done yet. There's drills, there's tape measures, there's about a dozen other things that need to go on this wall and get off my workbench. So, if you want to see those builds, don't go anywhere. Alright, confession time. If I had to do this all over, I would probably space them out about 4 inches a piece. I did 3 because, 1, aesthetically, I think that looks better than bigger spacing, and it's still functional. 3 is functional, but 4 would have been better. I would have had more wall coverage. Probably could have worked better for the bigger tools, but again, like I said, I think this works for me. I did sacrifice a little bit of functionality for aesthetically looking because I like the smaller spacing, but I didn't want it too small. So, long story short, just plan it out. Maybe cut a couple scraps and put them on your wall and see how it looks. Do not skip the planning phase. I did do that, and like I said, I kind of went in the middle. I did put 3 inches and 4 inches and some bigger and smaller. I liked the way 3 came out the best. So, just like I said, don't be like everyone else. Plan it out, make your own. Don't just copy anybody you see online. Oh, and one more thing. If you had this wall and 1 sheet of plywood, what is the first tool you're building? I really want to know in the comments. Of course, we may not have the same tools, but if you were going to build one and you have one wall with a little bit of space and your first tool holder, what's it going to be? Let me know down in the comments. I'm serious. Whatever gets the most votes, I'm building in the next video. So drop it down in the comments. Alright, that's it for this video. One sheet, one tool holder, CapitalJ signing off.